The stage lights blasted across the massive Ireland's Got Talent arena, transforming the entire hall into a world of noise, shadows, and expectations as Liam Elvis Dizon, a fragile 19-year-old from the crowded streets of Davao City, slowly stepped into the spotlight. His walk was cautious, almost timid, like someone who had spent his whole life being overlooked. His clothes were old and slightly oversized, a faded white polo and dark pants borrowed from a neighbor who told him, "Wear this, Anik, at least you will look decent on TV." His shoes were scratched, worn down from years of walking long distances because jeepney fare was often a luxury. Yet despite his appearance, there was something in his eyes, fear mixed with a burning, desperate dream. The kind of dream only poverty can carve deep into someone's soul. As the audience looked at him, whispers filled the room. Some were curious, some doubtful, some sympathetic. Up on the judges' panel, Simon Cowell leaned back, folding his arms with that signature expression, half skeptical, half analyzing. Michelle McGrath leaned forward, offering him an encouraging smile, noticing the tremble in his hands. Lewis Walsh adjusted his glasses, studying the young Filipino boy like he was trying to understand the entire story written behind his eyes. Liam stood at the center of the stage, staring at the microphone like it was both his enemy and his only hope. He took a shaky breath, then said in a trembling voice, I come from Davao City. My family is very poor. We struggle a lot. But music, it keeps me alive." His voice cracked, and he blinked fast, trying to stop the tears that threatened to fall before he even began. The audience went silent, not out of pity but out of connection. Every word sounded like it carried years of hardship. Then he added, almost whispering, "I will sing an Elvis Presley song." The moment he said Elvis, Simon raised an eyebrow sharply. He had heard thousands claim they could sing Elvis. Most failed. But something about this boy, his humility, his fear, his raw honesty, made the room hold its breath. The music started, and Liam changed. His voice came out rich, deep, stunningly powerful. A voice that should not have been possible for a boy so thin, so nervous, so poor. The transformation was so sudden that Simon's jaw actually dropped. Michelle covered her mouth, eyes wide with disbelief. Lewis whispered, "No way, that voice is Elvis." The audience shot to their feet within seconds, cheering as if they had just witnessed a miracle live on stage. Stage staff froze in the wings, staring at the monitors. Camera operators zoomed in so fast that even they were caught off guard. By the time Liam hit the last note, a note filled with pain, power, and soul, the entire arena erupted. And for the first time that night, Simon Cowell slowly leaned forward and smiled with pure shock and respect. The applause did not simply echo through the arena. It roared, crashing over the stage like a rising tide that refused to soften. Liam stood frozen in the center, chest rising and falling rapidly, as if he had run miles to get there. His fingers shook so hard he had to grip the microphone stand just to keep himself steady. For a moment, he looked terrified. Terrified that the cheers maybe weren't real, terrified that everything he heard was a dream he might wake up from. The poor boy from Davao who grew up singing beside a small sari-sari store suddenly stood in front of thousands of people praising him like he was a superstar. The judges were still absorbing what they had just witnessed. Michelle McGrath, overwhelmed, placed her hand over her heart and exhaled deeply. Her eyes glistened and her voice trembled as she leaned forward and said, "Liam, I don't know what just happened, but I felt every single word you sang. It was beautiful. It was honest." She blinked away tears, visibly moved by the raw emotion in his performance. She wasn't just reacting to his voice, she was reacting to the journey behind it. Lewis Walsh cleared his throat and sat up straighter, but even he couldn't hide the emotion forming in his eyes. He tried to keep his composure, but his voice betrayed him. You sounded like a young Elvis Presley. Better than many professionals I've heard in decades." He pointed at Liam, shaking his head in disbelief. "You have something extremely rare, soul. Real soul. And that can't be taught." The audience erupted again, cheering louder, stamping their feet, shouting Liam's name. Some even held their phones up, waving them like glowing candles in a digital tribute. Liam's eyes widened, and he pressed his hand to his chest, overwhelmed by the love pouring toward him. Then everything went silent again because Simon Cowell leaned forward. Simon looked at Liam with an expression no one could quite read at first, deep, focused, almost emotional. He rested his arms on the table, lowered his voice, and said, "Liam, I have judged singers for years, thousands of them, and I can count on one hand the number of times I've been shocked like this." The crowd gasped. Even the other judges turned toward Simon in surprise. He continued, voice heavy and sincere, "I honestly can't believe my ears. You walked on stage like someone who barely had the confidence to hold a microphone. You looked scared. You looked tired. You looked like life hasn't been easy for you." Simon paused and Liam swallowed hard, emotion rising in his throat. "But then you sang," Simon said slowly, "and everything changed. You didn't just sing an Elvis song, you owned it. You made it feel alive again." The audience cheered wildly. Simon pointed directly at the trembling boy. "That wasn't just good, that was world-class." Liam covered his mouth with both hands, sobbing softly, overwhelmed by what he was hearing. Behind him, the stage lights glittered like stars, illuminating the poor boy from Davao who had finally been seen. The crowd chanted his name again, louder, stronger, echoing through the arena. "Liam! Liam! Liam!" The lights dimmed slightly as the applause finally settled, leaving a shimmering energy floating in the air, an energy that felt electric, sacred, unforgettable. Liam stood in the center of the stage, shoulders trembling, tears streaming freely down his cheeks. He couldn't stop himself. All he could think about was home. His mother washing clothes for neighbors to earn a few coins, his father selling street food from a tiny cart, his siblings sharing one plate of food when times were tough. And now here he was, under the brightest lights in Ireland, with thousands of people chanting his name like he was someone important. The silence was thick, emotional, almost heavy. Simon Cowell looked at Liam, then exchanged a long, knowing glance with Michelle and Lewis. Without a single word spoken, the entire audience sensed something was about to happen. The room leaned forward collectively, every person, every camera, every judge. Then Simon did something he rarely does. He stood up. The crowd exploded instantly. The sound was deafening, screams, claps, shouts, like a wave of pure emotion crashing through the arena. Even the cameraman jumped to reposition, knowing this moment mattered. Liam froze, eyes widening, breath catching in his chest as he stared at Simon in shock. Simon walked to the center of the judges' panel, his expression softer than usual, almost fatherly. His voice lowered, filled with gravity and sincerity. "Liam," he said, "you came here tonight wearing borrowed clothes, with fear in your eyes and a dream in your heart." Liam swallowed hard, tears falling faster. "But when you sang, you awakened something in this entire room. You didn't just perform. You touched souls." Michelle was already crying now, tears rolling openly down her face. Lewis clapped slowly, emotionally, nodding at Liam with admiration. Simon placed both hands on the golden buzzer. The audience screamed, because at that moment everyone knew. Simon continued, voice cracking just slightly, "You remind all of us why this show exists. Not for fame, not for money, but for a chance for someone like you, Liam, someone from humble beginnings, to show the world the greatness inside them." Liam shook his head in disbelief, whispering, No, this can't be real." Simon looked straight into his eyes and said, "Liam, today your life changes." Boom. The golden buzzer slammed down. And instantly, a massive explosion of golden confetti erupted from the ceiling, raining down like a miracle from the heavens. The stage transformed into a shimmering field of gold. Liam fell to his knees, overwhelmed, sobbing uncontrollably as the confetti coated his hair, his clothes, his trembling hands. Michelle stood up and ran onto the stage, kneeling beside him and pulling him into a tight, emotional embrace. Lewis clapped above his head, tears in his eyes as he shouted, "You deserve this, Liam. You deserve every second of it." Simon remained standing, giving a rare, deeply heartfelt smile. The poor boy from Davao, who once sang on street corners to help feed his family, now stood on a world stage covered in gold, with the world watching in awe. And at that moment, Ireland's Got Talent had found its newest legend,